Before it all unfolded, the people in Ukraine led ordinary lives, oblivious to the impending tragedy, unaware that acquiring a new pet would soon become a regrettable decision. Among them was a 77-year-old grandfather residing in the village of Mykolaiv in the Donetsk region. Having recently lost his wife, the man found himself engulfed in grief, compounded by the departure of his faithful family dog, a companion of many years. With his children scattered across distant cities and towns, their infrequent visits unable to alleviate his loneliness, a plan was devised. One day, one of his sons and his family came to visit the old man, and they brought a very special surprise. A tiny black and white pup to be the man's new best friend. The old man was super excited and very grateful for the thoughtful gift. He had lived with animals his entire life, and having another pet to care for would hopefully give him the company and the love he needed daily, which his family was unable to provide for him. Even if the man was in his late 70s, he was still really strong and could easily take care of a new pup, and that he did. He took him for walks, potty trained him, and of course gave him all of the love that he could. The two of them became inseparable very quickly, and when the war broke out just weeks later, the man took a lot of comfort in his little puppy. Had he known how things would turn out, he might not have said yes to a new puppy, but it all happened so suddenly, and now he had no choice but to care for the dog as best he could in the circumstances. The man's children wanted him to come live with them, but all the trains and other forms of public transport were just too full, and he couldn't get out of town. He was worried about his family, but he also didn't really want to leave the home that he had raised them all in, the home where he had spent so many happy years with his late wife. Truth be told, he didn't really believe that he would be affected by the war as much as he later would. He wasn't a soldier, and he was living in a tiny town. There should have been nothing to worry about. Some of his family who lived in the big cities that were first attacked did go out of the country, and he promised that he would join them as soon as possible. Some of the other children lived further away where it remained relatively safe, but even getting to them would be a challenge at that point. Public transport was full and unreliable, and the roads were becoming more dangerous. The grandfather decided that the safest course of action for both him and his puppy would be to stay in his home. They hadn't even needed to take shelter once, and things felt quiet in their area. Besides, there was no way that he was leaving his puppy, as some had been forced to do with their pets. The man continued with his normal routine, planting vegetables in his garden, visiting neighbors, and playing with his puppy. Besides the constant worry about his children, life didn't really change all that much. Not there at least, in other parts of the country. Things had changed rapidly. Many felt like they were in danger, but the Ukrainian police force was crucial when it came to taking care of the citizens of the country. Instead of upholding law and order, their main focus seemed to switch. They focused on bringing hope to those around them. They helped to evacuate those they could help, and they assisted others who couldn't leave to get to safer areas and shelters where they could be safe. The police force had become a symbol for some of the good and heartwarming things that were happening all around the country. In places where food was getting scarce, they brought fresh bread and provisions and handed them out to people who needed them. They even brought toys to children who had needed to flee without their own or who had lost their possessions because of raids or bombings. The police were doing everything they could to assist the people, and soon they would become the only hope that the old man would have left. It was a normal day in the village earlier. The man and the puppy had gone for a walk, and they even stopped to chat with some of their friends along the way. Then they went back and watered their garden. It all seemed very simple and easy. Nothing out of the ordinary was going on. The man was watching some television, and the dog was just running around in the house playing with his toys. Then suddenly, loud booming noises shook the building. Bombs were being dropped on their home. The old man's first thought was to get to his puppy, and he ran into the house away from the door. But then suddenly, an explosion was felt close to him, and part of his home was gone. He had no idea where his puppy was or even if he was still alive. He needed to get out or he wouldn't survive himself. It broke his heart to leave the puppy, but there was nothing else he could do. He had to find shelter. He got out of the house and ran a distance away. Just as quickly as it began, the bombing was over, and complete silence fell over the village. The village was destroyed, and those who got out started searching for loved ones. Others tried to see if they could save any of their belongings. Rescue services were completely stretched thin, and it was up to the Ukrainian police to help. They found the shocked old man looking at the rubble that was once his home, and they did their best to make sure that he was unharmed. He just kept begging them to find his puppy. They looked at the rubble and knew that it was unlikely that they would find a small dog in the debris, but for them, every life mattered, and they would try their best to help the old man. They promised to search as long as the old man kept his distance and didn't try to search too. He could get seriously injured in the rubble, and they didn't want that. It was really hard for the old man to stand to the side and wait for the police to find something, but it was what he needed to do. The men dug through some of the debris, going in the direction of where the man last saw his pup, but they couldn't find anything. After a while, they felt like it was time to give up. Then suddenly, they heard a soft squeal coming from underneath them. Grabbing gloves, all the men started to dig. They had to move large pieces of rock and debris. It was incredible that anything could be alive beneath all of this. Finally, after what felt like a long time, they lifted the puppy out of the rubble. His black fur had turned completely brown, and he was gasping for breath. They cleaned him up and held him close. He was shivering and scared. The poor baby had been through a terrible ordeal. But he was alive, and as they cared for him, he started to calm down and breathe easier. There were no experts, but it seemed like the pup was going to be okay. Now they could give the news to his owner, who was waiting desperate for some good news. They presented the puppy to him, but before that, each man, including the cameraman, took a moment to tenderly scratch the little one's head. Yet it was the owner's reaction that nearly brought them to their knees. His response would move you to tears. When the puppy caught sight of his owner, his tail began to wag eagerly. The 77-year-old man was overwhelmed with joy at the sight of his cherished companion alive and well. While he had dared to hope for such an outcome, deep down he knew the odds were against them being reunited. A wave of relief washed over him as he expressed his gratitude to the police officers for their unwavering efforts in finding and returning his beloved dog. Despite having lost everything else, the possessions paled in comparison to the joy of being reunited with his loyal companion. Everything else could be replaced, but being together again was priceless. What do you think of this old man's love for his puppy? Let us know in the comments section. I hope you liked this video. Please give it a thumbs up and share it with your loved ones. Also, press the bell icon to never miss the update from our channel. Thank you.